For me, I think that's the wrong decision. I think they've made the decision to get rid of Ole. If they're hiring an interim manager, you may as well have kept Ole. I think now is the time. You've made the change. You've stepped up as owners. You've made the decision that everyone knew was going to happen. Like I said, it was inevitable. Either get your checkbook out and find someone like a Brendan Rodgers that they've discussed and spoken about, or go and get Zidane, unless he's distanced himself and spoken to them and said no.
Well, funnily, both of them actually distanced. I know certainly Zinedine Zidane at the beginning of this month said no. Brendan Rodgers was actually appalled by the questioning that he received this week in his press conference and said, Ole's still in a job, so now he's not in a job, potentially.
That's exactly the reason why they say that. Look, Steven Gerrard done exactly the same thing up at Rangers, ended up leaving a couple of weeks later to go Aston Villa. Now, firstly, they can afford any one of their managers. We know that. Why give a guy an interim manager to the end of the season? I just don't understand. For me, have they given up already this season? Have they given up on top four? I don't know. Michael Carrick, Darren Fletcher, whoever it may be, may do a fantastic job. It remains to be seen. But they're not going to be there beyond the end of the season, in my opinion. I think they need an elite manager. Go and get one.
Where do you stand on this? Do they need to bring in somebody, like Darren says, an elite manager right here, right now,
Absolutely.
To get them up that
I think it's symptomatic of the lack of decision-making and leadership at the top of the club in relation to football that they've made this decision, because they are just 6 points off the top four. It is easily achievable if you were to go out and get an elite manager. Spurs are a point behind them, and they've been decisive in going out to get Antonio Conte to give themselves a chance of getting into the top four. He's been working hard already in a mini pre-season to get the players fit enough to be able to compete with the teams at the top of the table for a Champions League place. Why would you put one of the backroom staff in that have, they worked for a guy under whom the club basically were treading water? It seems very, very strange. And as I say, and we'll go after 11 o'clock and I'll tell you a few of the other sports writers who feel that a lack of leadership at the top of Manchester United is to blame for prolonging the inevitable, first of all, but for the club being in the state that it is now.
Yeah, and the fact is, you mentioned Antonio Conte, that managers that perhaps they might have looked at are no longer available. So are they scrabbling around, or is Zidane right there and for the taking?
I think he's right there for the taking. I do. I think they could sit him down. They could force his hand. Whether he wants to come to the Premier League or not, they could force his hand. This is Manchester United. It's one of the biggest clubs in the world, even now in the current situation. They can attract a manager like Zinedine Zidane to come over, absolutely. The indecisiveness at the top of Manchester United, they lost out on Conte. I think, I'm a Spurs fan, but if it was a choice between Man United and Spurs for Conte, he would have chosen Manchester United.
See, this is the reason why you have to give Daniel Levy credit at Spurs, because he gave him what he wanted. He realised that this was a guy, Chelsea, Juventus, Inter Milan, picked up clubs that were on their knees and restored them to the top. Why would he not be a good fit for Manchester United, where the players are underachieving massively given the investment in the club? It makes zero sense. And if you are saying that you're going to give someone the job until the end of the season on an interim basis, you are effectively saying you don't want to get the free agent that is Zidane, a guy who has won 3 Champions Leagues, worked with big egos, managed to cope with the pressure of managing a massive club in Real Madrid and making the sum of the parts come together. I don't understand why that wouldn't qualify him to take over a club like Manchester United, for whom a top 4 place is easily achievable.
I think it shows as well that Daniel Levy, albeit again Spurs fan speaking, is not publicly liked in terms of the Spurs supporters, but he knows how to run a football club. He got rid of Nuno knowing he's got Antonio Conte straight away. The guys running Manchester United have kind of fallen to public opinion, in my opinion, that get rid of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Now they don't know what to do. They don't know who they're going to get. They've probably not even spoken to any manager.
And I wouldn't even disagree with that. I think, as has been said many times, commercial success over footballing expertise, and that's the reason why they are in this situation. And I think the clubs around the top 4 places will see an opportunity, because they've decided to make this decision until the end of the season, rather than going out and getting someone who would give them all something to think about.
We haven't got long. I mean, we've got about 30 seconds, so I'm going to end on you probably, Darren. In terms of Brendan Rodgers, like I say, he has distanced himself this week. Would he be a good fit? Could you see him fitting in at Manchester?
I think he'd be a good fit. He knows the Premier League, FA Cup winner, obviously with Leicester, so he knows exactly what's what in terms of he can run a football club. Whether he'd want to, I really don't know. In my opinion, I think he'd be looking to stay at Leicester.
Look, after weeks of speculation, Manchester United have sacked Ole Gunnar Solskjaer this morning following that 4-1 defeat to Watford. At 10:30, United released a statement announcing the decision. This is what they said. Ole will always be a legend at Manchester United, and it is with regret that we have reached this difficult decision. While the past few weeks have been disappointing, they should not obscure all the work he has done over the past 3 years to rebuild the foundations for long-term success. Ole leaves with our sincerest thanks for his tireless efforts as manager and our very best wishes for the future. His place in the club's history will always be secure, not just for his story as a player, but as a great man and a manager who gave us many great moments. He will forever be welcome back at Old Trafford as part of the Manchester United family. Michael Carrick will now take charge of the team for the forthcoming games, while the club looks to appoint an interim manager to the end of the season. Plenty more from Ben throughout the day here on Sky Sports News. As he mentioned, though, reaction is coming, as you might imagine, all the time to the decision, including from Sky Sports pundit and former teammate Gary Neville. He's tweeted this: "Thank you, Ole. You did us proud. The last 2 months were tough, but before that, you restored some soul into the club." So, Gary Neville tweeting that this morning. Darren, it's not come as a shock to anyone, has it? This is not shocking news that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has been sacked. But I guess the problem I think a lot of people are going to have with this is the timing and the projection that it took.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to refer to some of the pieces in the papers over the course of the next hour. But, I just want to talk about the characterisation of the media as some sort of pitchfork mob deciding, obeying for Solskjaer's blood. And that's not quite true. I think throughout this whole period, the statistics have told their own story. I saw when Jeff asked the questions yesterday. Jeff Shreves was very fair, but he too recognised the point at which United had reached. And he was making that very clear to Solskjaer. And Solskjaer, to be fair to him, was answering those questions as well. But I think as far as the club are concerned, there is a feeling that you were seeing all of the other clubs around them performing and United putting in the kind of display, I wouldn't even call it performance, the kind of display we saw yesterday. We were talking off air. There were moments during yesterday's game where Watford were attacking and I thought the linesman had put his flag up because the United defenders had literally stopped playing, stopped running. And this was a level of how far they'd fallen. Nothing to do with Watford, everything to do with Manchester United. There is a piece in today's paper by Oliver Holt which still stands true because his criticism is not of Solskjaer, it is of the owners of the club. It's in the Mail on Sunday, and the headline of it is, and these are the Mail's words: "Solskjaer not the root of the problem, it's the incompetent mediocrities who have turned United into a laughingstock." And he says a couple of things. Hey, it's very scathing, I warn you right now. He says, if he were judged on how many noodle partners he has signed, then it might have a case for putting him in charge of choosing the new manager. But this is about football. He says, "It is astonishing that a club like United was briefing recently that it was willing to let Solskjaer limp on to the end of the season and appoint a successor then. Really? The best supported club in England, a club that used to reign supreme, happy to write off a season barely a quarter of the way through, rather than make a tough choice by getting rid of a nice bloke. That kind of thinking underlined just how far United have fallen. They've allowed a situation to develop where they are already a dozen points adrift of Chelsea. Another season without one of the big trophies United used to chase is effectively sealed." And it's a piece that talks all about the decision-making of the owners, or lack of, the inertia in difficult moments. And I would imagine you could actually factor in this move not to go for a high-profile manager like a Zidane that Ole talks about in his piece, but to go until the end of the season and appoint a manager then, because it does raise the question, if not Zidane, if not a Rodgers, then who?
Can you see why? Can you see any reason in terms of, Gary Neville? I mean, a lot of people have been quite scathing about how he's supposedly backed Ole Gunnar Solskjaer throughout this process, but and always, maintained that they were going to give Ole till the end of the season. Perhaps because of what's gone on before in terms of their fingers, they felt they got their fingers burnt when they've made quick decisions. So can you see why they took this long, or can you see why they've done it today? Has there been, was there a straw, do you feel, here that they had to do?
I think they were hoping that because it was Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, a club legend on the pitch, they were hoping that it would turn, merely with the players that they had as well. They obviously got the victory at Tottenham. That kept him in the job again. Every time there was a time where they were struggling and it looked like it was going to happen, he'd pull a result out the bag. And not so much him, which may be unfair, but the players would pull a result out the bag. And unfortunately, they've not done that recently. And 4-1 was the last straw. I think if we look at clubs and the way they're run, you look at Chelsea. I mean, they would have got rid of Ole 5 times in the lot. When you see Manchester United want to win a trophy, they lose to West Ham in the League Cup. Okay, it's the League Cup, but it's still a trophy. It's an opportunity to get to a final and win a trophy. They lose to Aston Villa. They get pummeled by Liverpool and Manchester City. They would have gone and sacked him a lot times over. They have delayed the process, of course. They've made the right decision to get rid of him. In my opinion, though, they're making the wrong decision in hiring an interim manager, because you've now got Michael Carrick to take over for the next 1 or 2 games maybe. Then you're going to hire an interim manager.
But I guess he was an interim but then stayed the job, so potentially could they hire an interim that's going to stay there?
Potentially, and I understand they're waiting for a manager, and the manager they want is probably not available until the end of the season. I understand that, but there are managers out there, Zinedine Zidane for instance, that are available right now that could come in and make a real big change to the football club. I do believe that. You look at what happened with Steven Gerrard and Villa. You look at Patrick Vieira at Palace. When legends come into your football club, it lifts the whole spirit, the whole togetherness of the football club.
So
why not do it now?
Tuchel at Chelsea
Why not do it now?
Picked up the reins after Frank Lampard and steered them to a dramatic upturn in form and to the Champions League as well. So I think as far as making a decision is concerned, bringing in an elite manager straight away, there is an argument for doing just that. And I have to say, I am mystified as to why. And I would imagine, given the timing of this decision, all of the newspapers have got time now to get into this in quite a big way. Obviously, all of the back pages tomorrow will tell the story. There'll be spread features on the work that Solskjaer's done, because as Gary Neville says, you cannot forget what he has done for the football club after taking over from Jose Mourinho. But there will also be a look into just why these guys in the picture, the Glazers, are taking so long to make a footballing decision that could save United's season and actually make them competitive this time around, rather than putting in someone who's going to mind the store.
Yeah.
We saw with Chelsea when they wanted to get an interim and wait for someone, the people they approached said, no, we don't want to be the guys who mind the store. We would like the job full time.
Yeah.
Getting in Tuchel has helped them to do that.
I mean, Vicky, Darren, you've got to have a heart of stone to not feel for Ole in that interview at the end of the game where he was nearly crying. He clearly has a lot of love for the club, has a lot of friends in the media side of things that do back him, like we said. But for Manchester United, there's only a certain amount of sense of joy and bringing smile back on faces. There's only a certain amount of time that can continue until it's now we have to start competing, we have to start winning. Ole's done a good job in bringing the team together apart from the last 7-8 games, but they've won nothing. They need an elite manager to take them back to the level that I remember as Manchester United being number 1.
Cristiano Ronaldo walked into this club only months ago. Many will look at this situation and some will start to think, hang on a minute, since he's come in, what's happened? Where do you stand on the debate there?
I don't go along with everyone that says that Ronaldo is the problem, that when Ronaldo plays, it takes away from Manchester United Listen, Ronaldo has been and still is one of the best players in world football. He's 2 goals shy of 800 career goals. That is an outstanding achievement for any footballer. He's dug Manchester United out of holes this season numerous times. You either build a team around Cristiano Ronaldo, like Portugal do, or you don't play him. People question why he doesn't track back. Well, he's a number 9. You don't have to track back. People question the speed that Manchester United attack when he wasn't playing. They can still attack with that speed, but with Cristiano Ronaldo as the number 9. And if you've got a goal scorer like that in your team, any manager in the world would want that.
Well, it's an interesting one because Oliver Holt, forgive me, he does talk about Ronaldo. My eyebrows went up when I read this piece, but you know, Ollie's always required reading for big stories like this. And Ollie says, which is quite interesting, Ronaldo would not be in the first team at Liverpool, and he would not be in the first team at Chelsea. He would not even be in the first team at Spurs, particularly now Conte is in charge, because the best teams do not carry passengers, even goal-scoring passengers, because it destroys the effectiveness of the side. And it's a really interesting, thought-provoking piece that he's done. Obviously, I'm returning to it. But Jonathan Liu in The Observer does a similar piece today, and he says that in retrospect, the decision to go all in on Jadon Sancho and more significantly Ronaldo, rather than strengthening in midfield or at fullback, may go down as one of those crossroad moments in the club's history, the point at which they were on the verge of building a new house but instead decided to blow it up for the YouTube numbers. And that kind of points to something that a lot of people have been remarking on, not least Ollie, which is that they seem to be enthralled to commercial success rather than footballing success. And so they believe that if the brand is doing well, it doesn't really matter if the team isn't fulfilling its potential. Obviously that will be cause for debate, and I'm sure the guys will debate that a bit later on. But I think as far as